Welcome to Talk to Brazil, the world's first English-language internet radio program about business in Brazil, now in podcast form. I'm Tom Reaoch and your host for the show. I'm talking to you from the city of Campinas, the state of Sâo Paulo, Brazil. So when you talk to Tom, you talk to Brazil and the world. Today's guest is Russell Dalgleish. He talks with us from Linlithgow, Scotland. Russell is managing partner at the advisory group Exolta Capital Partners and also chairman of the Scottish Business Network. He is also known out in the world as the tall Scotsman. Russell and I connected on LinkedIn after I read an article he posted regarding a recent trip to Brazil. So with that, hello Russell and welcome to Talk to Brazil.
Thank you.
Russell, one of the things, you have an extensive list of accomplishments. One that I noted, you are also named as one of the 100 most influential British entrepreneurs. And you are, as you said, a tall Scotsman. When you go into a room, I'm sure that people see you because you're above everybody else, and they can come up to you. From the information that I saw on LinkedIn, it's the same effect. I went to meet Russell. But from your point as a partner looking out into the world and from your vantage point, in real life, that's the case. You're tall, you're looking out. From a virtual situation, when you look out into this world of innovation, startups, what do you see?
Oh, what an excellent question. I see opportunity, and I think I always have. And I think what's different today is there are more opportunities than ever before, because historically we were quite restricted on our opportunities logistically. Mm-hmm. So it was possible for me here in Scotland to sell product in Edinburgh, our major city, or Glasgow, our secondary major city. Mm-hmm. But to sell in somewhere far away like London was quite difficult. How do I know the market? How do I make the connections? But today, I can make connections across the globe. I can market across the globe. I can compete head on with some of the biggest brands in the world because they have the same tools that I have. That means there's opportunity globally.
But how do you point out, when you're looking out into a sea of today almost 8 billion people and rapidly approaching probably 1 billion companies, how do you pick and choose?
That's very interesting. So what I do is I position myself in a particular way in the market through myself and the companies that I support. This then attracts people towards us. And then what we have to do is a sifting process with the individuals or companies we approach to see if they will make for a good partner or a good customer. And there is a developed criteria for that. So, for example, I have a criteria when I'm approached by someone who says, would I like to do a podcast? So I have a criteria to see that the individual has experience of delivering podcast interviews and also has an audience and is looking to discuss a subject that interests me, hence the fact I accepted to do this. So it's all about being identified so that people understand not only who you are, but why you do what you do, and also being able to sift very quickly those incoming requests.
Now talk about Brazil. You came to Brazil, and in your article on LinkedIn, this was your first experience in Brazil. What I understand, Brazil wasn't on your radar for a reason, or was it?
No, Brazil wasn't on my radar. I do a lot of work internationally, and though it was a part of the world that I had researched as part of our organisation, Scottish Business Network, it wasn't something where there'd been an immediate opportunity. On this occasion, a very good friend of mine, the author Michael Anderson, had been asked to speak at a conference in Campinas in Brazil, but unfortunately he was unable to accept because after being asked, he fell in love with a young lady in London, and though he was in San Diego, he decided to move to London to live. But in order to get a visa, he had to give up his passport, so that negated his ability to travel. So he called and asked if I would be interested in speaking at the conference on leadership, and I readily agreed because I believe, again, if I'm asked to do something, if it meets my criteria, I do it. What excited me about Brazil was what I didn't know.
Okay.
So that's what triggered me to come. What was really interesting for me was that I received a number, when I mentioned online that I was traveling to Brazil, I was contacted by a number of connections who said to me that I had to be very careful because Brazil was a very dangerous place.
Uh-huh.
So I did my research, and what I found was that though, as in most countries in the world, there are significantly higher crime rates in different parts of inner cities, in the area of Campinas, crime rates were relatively low. I also took the precaution of working with the organisers who assured me everything would be safe. And my experience was, it was perfect. It was a lovely experience spending a week in Campinas in the Sâo Paulo area.
Wow. No rain, good weather?
No rain, no. The weather was lovely. I have to say, as a Scotsman, once it gets over 30 degrees, it gets quite challenging. But it wasn't. My memory of Brazil isn't the weather. My memory of Brazil is the people, because I met people who were very interested in taking on board some of the theories of leadership, and particularly in a technology company that I've developed. And they were also interested in building companies, reaching out. And in Brazil, it seemed to be a country with a lot of opportunity.
Well,
so I hope that some of the messages I shared we're going to help people to grow their business.
Did you wear a kilt when you came?
No, it was my first visit to Brazil, so I was quite conservative. So if I came again, I think I'd probably be more adventurous.
I think you should, because many people that I know, I'm part of also an international group, and there are Scotsmen who take part, and they do show up in their kilts, so it's always a great experience. And just to remind you, my last name Reaoch is Scottish origin. My great-grandfather was Scottish, and it's one of the few names in the world that has 3 vowels together. So nobody uses it in Brazil. Here I am either Thomas or Tom, and Reaoch is difficult. So, but when you walked into the room for the first time, when you came to this event, and obviously you say you are the tall Scotsman, you're 6'5". How do you think others saw you? What was that first 2 seconds?
Well, I have spent a lot of time understanding who I am, what makes Russell tick, what are my positives and my negatives. So I'm able to understand that when I walk into a room, to understand how people probably react. So not just because of my height, but also because of some of the senior positions I've held in my career. Sometimes people can be, they don't see me as someone they can approach.
Right.
I think if you've had the title managing director or chief executive officer or investor, so you have to break that down with humour. But what works most of all is honesty. So when talking about leadership, sharing in detail the things that haven't worked and showing you honestly sharing how you have dealt with those issues, it shows that we're all the same, because that commonality is there. All of these human beings with the 2 arms and the 2 legs that make up the 7 billion people in the world are all the same. We all have families, we all have pressures, we all need money, we all want to get on with life. So getting to that commonality as quickly as possible.
And then that put everybody at ease. Was that specific to Brazil? That's the way you are in the world?
That's the way I am in the world. So exactly the same. Because I remember I do a lot of leadership training in the Middle East, in Dubai and Abu Dhabi and Riyadh. And I was told, about the cultural differences of working in the Arab world.
Right.
But actually, I used exactly the same approach there and got exactly the same response, just as I do in Tokyo or anywhere else in the world.
So what I hear you saying, if I can pick up on the two key points and key words of who is Russell, it's honesty and authenticity.
Yeah, very interesting. The word authenticity came up in all of the reviews I got for my training in Brazil. So, yes, I suppose.
When we say walk the talk, I take that and equate that to authenticity. You are who you are, and if you are who you are, people see who you are and embrace that.
Yes.
Is that true?
It is. And then your purpose in life is to be the best who you can be. So I try to strive to be the best who I can be. And that's what life's about. So having that philosophy has stood me in good stead for the last 20 years.
Good. Because you're a Scotsman and I'm an American and I'm in Brazil and you travel the world. But specifically in Brazil, many times because of, I'll call it our authenticity and maybe objectivity, because the article that you posted on LinkedIn is very objective and very well done. Sometimes my objectivity comes across as being rude, being cold. How do you melt yourself down not to be that way? Or how should I melt myself down not to be seen that way?
I think you show your vulnerability as part of the authenticity. So I run a large advisory business in the UK, and being an advisor means that I'm required to go and deal with individuals running companies, and they're asking for my advice.
Right.
So I will give them my honest advice. And my honest advice might be, in my opinion, what you are doing won't work. You're going to have to change what you're doing. Here's my suggestion of what you do. Now, I try to do that in as honest and straightforward a way as I can. It's meant from the heart. I'm trying to give the right advice. But some people will see that as being too direct. So I will be described as direct, and I've just got to do what I feel is right. So if I feel what you're doing, it's interesting, your podcast, if I felt there was no audience for what you're doing, I would share that with you. I would try to do it as nice as I could. But what I would do is I would suggest alternatives. However, what's interesting, what I would say is, this is a fantastic time to be doing a podcast about Campinas and the tech developments that are going on there, because that's what the world wants to look for. There's so much investment capital around the world looking for opportunity. So this is a great thing to be doing.
And you're one of those persons, you're one of those professionals out there looking.
Yes.
And as you said, you see Tokyo, you see China, you see the Dubai. There are other opportunities. The world has millions of opportunities.
Yes,
so
indeed.
How does a small startup in Dubai, in Campinas, in anywhere, how do they stand up? How are they big enough to be seen? How should they be big enough to be seen?
So, in the development of a tech company, we will spend the majority of the money we have and the time we have on developing products. I would say we have to get the ratio more 50-50 between developing the product and talking about the product or service. So it's all about getting the message that you have about the problem that you solve out into the market. So pushing out the messages about the benefits of what you're doing. So the technology companies I have don't talk about the technology, they talk about the benefits. And what they do is we do an exercise to map the market to try to work out what does the profile of the potential customer look like, where are they in the world, and then we will develop a marketing campaign, probably initially on something like social media, to explain that we're a specialist in that. We will then look to create connections through products such as LinkedIn and get conversations going. That's what we do.
What I hear more often, just I want to get to one point, more often than not, I hear, and I agree with your message, but many companies or many persons starting up say, well, I'm not ready. He still goes back to the drawing board, but he says, I'm not ready. Is anybody ever ready?
So I'll tell a story. So I was on a plane coming back from Japan to the UK, and we flew through Doha in Oman. We had to change planes. So we slept on the first leg. So we were awake for 7 hours between Oman and the UK. The plane had Wi-Fi. As the plane took off, my colleague and I were talking about a potential problem that we'd identified in the market that could be resolved by a company, by a product. So we thought, well, this is interesting. So as the plane took off, we started to develop the concept. While on the plane, we registered a URL and created a simple website that described what a company might look like that was solving that problem. We then, as we were halfway through the flight, started to build a mail out list and sent messages to 200 people that we thought would be interested in this company that we were going to create. By the time the plane landed, we had the first 2 meetings lined up. So we were able to go to those meetings and explain about our understanding of the problem and to get verification from the market. And what the market told us was our ideas were good, but here was a better idea. So we revamped the product to meet that requirement. So I would say you start marketing at the very beginning. If you have intellectual property to protect, and protect your intellectual property, talking about the problem is a great thing to do.
So you literally go by the fly.
I think speed's important.
I think it's essential. It really is. That's a good point. Get up and go.
There is someone else in the world at this precise moment having exactly the same thoughts as you're having, and it's taking advantage of those that's important. So, and it's my experience has been the fact that you have to get out there to find your market, and your market may not be simply in your hometown. Your market may be the other side of the world. We've got a fantastic company in Scotland which works in the health sector, and they have a company called Craneware. They have an amazing solution, and though based in Scotland, the vast majority of their customers are in the States because that's where their solution is most appropriate.
But I think today we need to say, it may be pretentious on my part, but maybe we should say, my hometown is the world.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
Now, one question, how many entrepreneurs are there in Britain? Do you have an idea?
I've got no idea. I know the numbers of
no, but 100,000, 50,000, 200.
Yeah, I would imagine. I would imagine more like that. I don't know. It must be in the hundreds of thousands.
Okay, let's take 100,000. I want to get back to a point that I made at the beginning, and I'm going to say that in context of thanking you for being with me. You are named as one of the 100 most influential British entrepreneurs. So that's the iceberg is 100,000. Russell's amongst 100 at the top, looking out in the world, and many of the others are underwater. Is that how I see it? Is that true?
It's probably not the words I would use, but yes. Underwater means different things.
Well, it could be, but if you're looking at an iceberg, that's where it is. But you're up there at the top. You like to go up the mountains on the weekend, and you're always looking out, and you're always seeing, and you're always going. Yeah. Is that Russell?
It is, yes. And it's interesting that I will get asked, how do I find the time to do so many things? And it's one of the other traits about being a successful entrepreneur is I'm amazingly well organised. So it might surprise you to know that I probably have 8 to 10 weeks holiday a year, where I go cycling in different parts of the world, because I've developed processes which automate a lot of what I do.
But you show that business can be fun.
Yes, very much fun.
So Russell, where do I want to thank you again for being with us and sharing everything that you have. Where is the best place for our audience to find you? Is that LinkedIn?
Yes, so it's Russell Dalgleish on LinkedIn.
And also, like to tell everyone to check out the Scottish Business Network site, and that's SBNSCOT. And on Twitter, they're at SBNSCOT. So the site is sbn.scot, Twitter at SBNScot. And for our favorite Scotsman right now, Russell, thank you for being part of our show. And without any doubt, we'll have you back in the future. And I'd like to talk about what you mentioned to me offline, listen to the heart. That will be our next discussion with you. Okay?
Thank you.
And thank you again. And I would also like to thank our audience for being part with us. And invite you to visit our website, talktobrazil.com, and follow our links to the Talk to Brazil business directory, where you'll find a list of competent professional service providers. I'd like to mention, too, that Talk to Brazil is sponsor of the VoixTheGame.com project. Marcos Linhares is the founder of Voix, and Voix is VOIX. Voix provides tools for educators to work on diversity acceptance issues, such as racism and gender inequality, giving voice to people who suffer discrimination. Marco Antonio Linhares is Brazilian from Fortaleza, Ceará, and we're very proud to be a sponsor of Marco Antonio. So you can always send your suggestions or comments and find me at tom@talktobrazil.com, or on LinkedIn, you can join the Talk to Brazil group and follow our discussions. So remember, when you talk to Tom, you talk to the world, you talk to Brazil, you talk to Scotland. Goodbye, and thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to Tom Reaoch on Talk to Brazil, the business connector to Brazil.